got some stuff I want to chat about. My books are my legacy. Why am I crying? I can't guarantee that my own life will have a happily ever after. I can guarantee that for my characters. Blogging, is this a bad idea? I'm a storyteller, first and foremost. Accountability. If I say it, maybe I'll actually do it. Hello and welcome to a new vlog. Welcome if you're new here. Hi, I'm Andrea. I'm a full-time university writing instructor and a part-time content creator and indie author. Welcome back if you're one of my lovely returning friends. It is great to have you all here. I hope you all get comfy, get cozy, get settled in. This is probably going to be another long and chatty vlog because that's what we do here. I've got some stuff I want to chat about. I'm starting to switch up my newsletter strategy. If you've been following for a while, you've heard me talk about my email newsletter. I've switched to doing it weekly. I was trying monthly and I was failing monthly. And so I would go like 6 months without sending an email to my list. Now I'm doing weekly, but at the beginning I was just trying to get into the weekly habit. So I was just keeping them really short and doing just weekly updates of what I've been up to. I want them to have more of a focus and I want them to feel a little bit more useful. So they'll still have that short update, but each week I also want to be talking about something, kind of like a mini blog post. Although I'm also thinking of starting blogging again. I know, I don't need more stuff to do each week, but I miss it. So the email that went out this morning, I had so much fun writing and I want to talk more and expand more on that topic in this vlog. Mandy, one of my lovely newsletter subscribers, but also one of the lovely YouTube friends I have over here in our community around this channel, I had asked the week before for people to submit questions they had about writing, about my books, about whatever. Mandy did, and as soon as I read her question, I loved it. So she was asking about how autobiographical are my books, because in Across the Pond 3, part of the conflict that Eleanor, the main character, is going through when her debut novel comes out is that reviewers are criticizing her for not knowing what genre her books fit into. And so Mandy was asking, A, if that was something that I struggle with, what genre do my books fit into, but also B, if it is something I relate to, is there an autobiographical element? How much of me is in Eleanor and how much of her experience is my experience? Quite a bit. I answered it in the email, but I have more thoughts because obviously in the email I was trying to keep it short. I don't want the emails to be massively long. So yeah, I want to talk about that throughout this vlog. How autobiographical are my books? What genre do I feel like my books fall into, and some of my problems and concerns with that, because that is something that I struggle with. And then also my newsletter strategy, like how I'm starting to tweak that, and thoughts about blogging again. It'll be kind of like an indie author focused vlog. I'm not doing any writing at the moment. As I feel like this is also something I'm trying to grapple with my channel. If you watched the last vlog, you saw me grappling for sure. I'm just struggling to find my place on this platform. So yeah, I just want to talk about all of these things. So it's going to be a bit of a rambly, chatty, indie author type vlog, while I also grade papers and wrap up teaching work for the week. So that's what I'm doing. I've got the last bit of my oat milk iced latte from Whole Foods. I've got the last bit of the last bunch of mums that I bought at Whole Foods 2 weeks ago. But then over here, I have the new rainbow mums that I bought. But I also have a flashing battery light, so that's my cue. I'm gonna get to work. I wanna just kind of put my head down and get to work for the next little while, and then I can stop and eat lunch. So, welcome to the vlog. I'm gonna stop talking now, but I'll be back in a minute. Where am I at? I'm at lunchtime. That's where I'm at. I am definitely ready for lunch, but I thought we could have a little bit of a chat first. Teaching work is going well, so nothing much to update there. But yeah, I definitely wanted to talk more about what I kind of started talking about in the newsletter. So if you read the newsletter, I think when this vlog goes up, it will have been last Friday's email that went out talking about how autobiographical are my novels and what genre my novels are in. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the vlog, Mandy's question was specifically, let me just pull up the email so that I can read the question. In Across the Pond in the series, some of the reviewers, so it was book 3 in particular, some of the reviewers criticized Ellie's book for not knowing if it wanted to be women's fiction or romance. At least that's how she was remembering it. I was curious if this is how you see your own writing, or how would you classify your own books? And do you think the world at large classifies your book as one or the other? My recent read through of ATB 1 through 3 had me wondering how autobiographical some of Ellie's experiences were for me. So we've got 2 different questions there. How autobiographical are my books, and what genre do my books kind of fall into, or how do I classify the genre of my books? So I kind of want to talk about the autobiographical aspect of the writing first, and then I will go eat, and then later we can talk about the genre, because I think both of them are really interesting questions, and both are things that I do think about a lot as I'm writing. But in terms of just how autobiographical are my novels, just in general, a lot. I would say they're a lot. There is so much of me So there's so much of Andrea and my personality in each of my books. And it's not just the Across the Pond series, although I do think Eleanor is the character that I most strongly relate to. Like, I think she's the one who's most modeled on me. And that's just because of how she started off in A Brave Start, and I maybe should have gone back as I was editing A Brave Start before publishing it and taken some of me out of her. But when I first started writing that book, it was, I didn't plan on publishing it. I thought maybe one day I would publish it, but I didn't know when I started it in like 2011, 2012, I think. I didn't know then that I was going to publish it independently and turn it into a whole series in 2019. So when I started writing it, it was just a personal project. It was just wish fulfillment. It was fantasizing and daydreaming on paper. I was basing a lot of Eleanor's journey on my own life. There were certain things that I totally changed. My parents are happily married. My father is a wonderful man. Eleanor's father, not so much. So there were certain things like that that I changed just to give her a more complicated, more dramatic backstory that would give me things that I could use to create some drama and conflict in her story. So, but like in the beginning of book one, Eleanor is living with her mom in the suburbs of Phoenix. She's finished a master's degree and is working part-time as an adjunct instructor and part-time at a bookshop. I, at the time, was living with my parents in the suburbs of Phoenix. I was working part-time as an adjunct instructor. I had finished my master's degree down in Tucson at U of A, but was working part-time as an adjunct instructor teaching theater. I can't remember. I think I did, like, Eleanor was teaching, her master's degree was in English. My master's degree was in film, but we both were teaching theater courses because we had taken a certain amount of theater courses as undergrads that just qualified us. So like I was using a lot of my experience there in terms of what she was teaching. At the beginning of book one, she's teaching modern drama. Modern drama is a class, it is a course title taught at the community colleges here in Phoenix. It's a course that I taught a few times. So that was all my experience. She was working part-time as well at a bookstore. I wasn't. I have worked retail, but I stopped working retail after my master's degree and was working part-time in costume design. So I didn't give Eleanor my costume design experience, but that's what I was doing. Where our lives kind of diverged was I was still working in costuming and writing this novel on the side and daydreaming about moving to London. Eleanor actually got to move to London. So that was kind of where it isn't autobiographical and is wish fulfillment and fantasizing and daydreaming into a Word document. And so Eleanor got to live the dream of, what if I, Andrea, got to move to England to study writing, or just for some other reason, but to study writing was the reason I gave Eleanor. That was her opportunity, an MFA in creative writing in London. So what if I, Andrea, got to move to London for some reason, and what if while I was there, I just happened to bump into my celebrity crush and he fell madly in love with me. So obviously Eleanor's story is, it's not quite so straightforward as that, but that was the basic premise. So even though obviously those aspects aren't autobiographical, there's still, most of my stories are based on the idea of, what if I, Andrea, got to move to a cute small historic town in Wisconsin and open up a bookshop? Or what if I, Andrea, was a successful author living in Bath And so these become the basic plot premises for the Independent Heart series, for More Than Fate. There's definitely parts of my personality that then go into each of the characters. A lot of the fears and insecurities of the different characters, the interests and personality of Kate in the Bookshop of Possibility, there's different aspects of me. There's different little Easter eggs. With Independent Hearts, the whole town of Olsenburg is based on a real town. It's based in part on every small town I've been to and fallen in love with. So there's parts of it that remind me of some of the small towns I've visited in England. There's parts of it that are kind of inspired by Bisbee and Jerome and some of the small historic towns here in Arizona. But the biggest influence is Mineral Point in Wisconsin, which is where my dad's side of the family is from. It's where my great-grandma lived, was born outside of Mineral Point, but has lived in that area for her entire life. Granny Ingrid in the Bookshop of Possibilities is inspired in part by all of my grandmothers, but is also really heavily influenced by my great-grandma Leela. Yeah, if I think too much about that, I'm going to get too emotional. But that's why that book was so emotional as I was writing it. All of the scenes related to Granny Ingrid were definitely emotional to write because of that personal connection. So I think each of my books, and even now like with the Across the Pond series, so like the Independent Heart series, there's a lot of autobiographical aspects in terms of the town of Olsenburg, and I kind of base the town of Olsenburg on the memories I have of my visits to Mineral Point. But then Kate with the bookshop, Lydia with the inn and pub, Elise with the candle shop. Like, I would love to own a bookshop. I would love to run an inn and pub in a historic building. I would love to have a candle shop. I love candles. So like the businesses that each of these women run, and it will be the same with Molly and Bryn, these are all businesses that in another life I could see myself doing. And so by writing these books, I get the opportunity to, at least for the year that I kind of take to outline and write and edit and publish, I get to live that life. So there's a huge part of my books that's autobiographical, and then there's another part that is like wish fulfillment of a different future my life could have, or a different future that I might have had if I'd made different choices. That's always the starting point for my books. It's what element of me do I want to put into my characters, because at this point my books are my legacy. My books are like, I'm not going to have children at this point. Like, I never say never, but I just don't see it happening. Certainly not biological children. And so I'm not going to pass my genes down to someone. There's not going to be little versions of me running around that have different aspects of my physical traits or my personality, the way that I have part of my mom's personality and part of my dad's personality, and my sister has that as well. Like, that's just not going to happen. So my books are my legacy in a way, and my books are how, if I think too much about this, I'm going to get really emotional, but my books are how I am passing on and leaving behind different aspects of my personality, of my... Ooh. Why am I crying? Different aspects of my personality, of my hopes, of my dreams for other people to read and experience and just kind of wonder, you know, how much of this is Andrea. You know, I don't have any grand delusions that 50 years from now anyone's going to still read my books, but, you know, I don't know how much my books will live on after I'm no longer here. But, you know, that is kind of the hope. I think we're all just wanting to leave a small part of us behind in some way. And like to a certain extent I do that with my teaching. I'm hopefully impacting my students, and hopefully memories, positive memories of lessons they've learned and things I've taught them will stick in their heads, and maybe, if I'm lucky, you know, advice I've given them will be advice that they pass on to their kids or their coworkers or their employees one day when they're managers and, you know, brilliant people in the companies they go to work for. But my books are a huge part of that. I think that's one of the reasons I've gotten into, and my YouTube channel too. But again, I don't know how much my vlogs are going to live on after I'm no longer here. But you know, those of you who've bought my books, I know that some of you have families, and maybe one day your kids will pick up a copy of my book that's still sitting on your shelf or something. Like, that's the hope. You know, maybe they won't last generation after generation after generation, but maybe they'll last 1 or 2 generations beyond my lifetime. And that's just a really nice thing to think about. So these books are my legacy in a lot of ways. And so they do have a lot of me and my history and my personality and my hopes and my dreams. So yeah, that's a very long and rambly answer. I was a little bit more succinct in the email, but this is why I wanted to talk about it, because like all this discussion about it being part of my legacy and stuff like that I didn't talk about in the email, and I knew I was going to have more thoughts about it, and I was right. But the genre question is definitely something I want to dive into a little bit more, so we will talk about that next. But first I really have to go get some food because I am absolutely starving. I've had lunch, then I've been back to work. Now I'm ready for a short break, so I thought I would chat with you all for a moment and talk about genre. You'd think that this would be an easy thing. You'd think that it would be like, I write romance, or I write fantasy, or I write mysteries. It's not quite that simple. I definitely write romance. But even then, like, I feel like most authors probably struggle with where their books fit within a subgenre within a bigger genre. So like, they definitely write romance, but maybe they struggle with where within romance their books fall. Romance and women's fiction are technically 2 different genres. And I feel like those are the 2 genres my books kind of straddle. And so that definitely makes it difficult to market. And so when I mentioned in book 3 of Across the Pond in Brave Together that one of the criticisms that Eleanor faces when her debut novel comes out is that reviewers say that they're not quite sure what genre it is. Is it trying to be romance? Is it trying to be women's fiction? It's not succeeding in either. It's like somewhere in the middle. And that's something that I've definitely struggled from the moment I've started self-publishing, is how do I market my books? How do I categorize and classify my books? Because part of being an indie author, part of publishing through Amazon KDP, and I imagine any of the other publishing platforms, Ingram Spark, Draft to Digital, would all be the same. And that's in that we have to fill out like the product information. Our book is the product, and so you have to put in the information that would go into the sales page, or the sales or product information for your book. So that's the author name, the book description, and that's categories and keywords. And so part of my publishing checklist every time I upload a book is I know what fields I have to fill in for each book when I upload them. And so I have a little like checklist worksheet that I just duplicate from one project to the next. Within each series, the keywords and stuff and categories don't really change, but I have definitely struggled with categories in particular because they are romance, but in my mind, they're also more than just romance. The elements that make them line up in the romance category is there's always a romantic plot, and that plot is half of the action, basically. It's not a secondary plot. It's not a minor plot. It's one of, there's always two kind of plots running concurrently in each novel, and they're of equal value. If you take the romance plot out or the other plot out, the book just isn't going to work as well. So there's always some sort of personal or professional, usually professional issue that the main character is dealing with. So in the Across the Pond books 1 through 3, it's Eleanor and her journey, first as a writing student and then as a writer working on her debut novel. It's her building her career. Like, that book starts out, before there's any romance in it, that book starts out with her feeling deeply unsatisfied with her professional life and professional identity. And then as she moves to London, she just happens to start having these kind of romantic adventures and misadventures before finding like the main guy. I don't want to give too many spoilers for those who haven't read Across the Pond yet. In More Than Fate, Isla is dealing with being a professional author, professional writer, what that means for her career. She's kind of at a point where she is very established, but she's made a name for herself in one genre, but she's kind of wanting to start doing something else. In the Across the Pond series, Kate's struggle to run the bookshop is just as big of a plot as her romance with the really handsome, sexy barista who owns the coffee shop next door. Lydia in Inn of Hopes and Dreams, she's trying to keep the family business of the inn and pub running and going after she has to kind of take it over very suddenly. And Candle Shop of Wicks and Whimsy, Elise is trying to run a bespoke handcrafted candle business. In the Inn of Hopes and Dreams, the romantic plot is the handsome but grumpy chef who Lydia has to hire. And in Candle Shop, it's the return of an old flame, a former love who Elise may or may not still be in love with, and the complications that ensue with that. So the romantic plots are really important to the books. And this next bit, I don't feel like this is a spoiler because this is just how all of my books are going to be. They're all going to have a happy ever after. They're all going to have the main characters getting over whatever crap is going on in their life and whatever thing that threatens the romantic relationship. They're always going to get through that and end up happily ever after. At least for now. Who knows what might happen to some of them in the future. Some of them might have another thing they've got to go through, but even then, you know, I can't guarantee that my own life will have a happily ever after. I can guarantee that for my characters. And so one of the main components of romance is that there is a happy ending, and the main characters triumph over everything that's been threatening them, and they ride off happily into the sunset, right? If it has romance but not a happy ending, that puts it more into women's fiction. So women's fiction can have a romantic subplot. It can have a very strong romantic plot, but the romance ending well is not the biggest lesson or thing that happens for the character. There might be something else that the character has to overcome. And so that's more women's fiction. Another element of women's fiction that is present in my books that is not often present in romance are themes of self-discovery, personal growth journeys of the main character that are separate from her relationship to the love interest in the book. And so that's where I feel like my books, half of the plot always feels like it's firmly in that women's fiction category, and half of the plot is always firmly in the romance section. And so I feel like most readers of either genre are okay with the other aspect. So someone who likes women's fiction and themes of self-discovery and personal growth and connections with friendships. Friendship is a huge theme in my books. There will always be a strong friendship group that's supporting the main character, even if it's just one or two friends. Because in More Than Fate, it's mostly one friend that Isla has, her friend Georgie. But there's still a friend. Well, then there's Mrs. Russell, the neighbor. So Isla's got a small friend group, but there are a couple people in there who she's very, very close to and who she relies on. And obviously in Independent Hearts, that series is centered around 5 women. And I'm slowly going through each of the women, and she each gets her own book. And A Brave Start, when Eleanor moves to London, her friendship group starts off with just her cousin, Jonathan, and then as she makes friends at her writing program, and then with John's friends, and then with the romantic interest in her life, in the subsequent books, she picks up more friends. And she still has friends back in Arizona. Of course, as the series progresses, some of those friends start moving across. So the friendship groups are really, really important to my stories, and you'll see that in Across the Pond Book 4. We're branching out from Eleanor into this friendship group. So Celeste is the main character. Celeste is the girlfriend of Eleanor's cousin, Jonathan. Book 4 is going to be about Celeste and Jonathan's relationship, and the friendship group of Eleanor, Celeste, Lillian, Carly, and Grace. That friendship group is really important and is a huge support to Celeste through all the stuff that Celeste is going to go through that you'll see in book 4. The main characters will always have the romance, but they'll also always have the friendship and just the personal and professional stuff that they're dealing with. And that makes it very hard for me to, my books just don't feel like they fall neatly into one genre box or the other. Like Independent Hearts is definitely small town romance, and it's got the romance, but it also has a lot of women's fiction. I think this is something where my covers also make it difficult. I do illustrated covers, which I like because it means I'm not dealing with stock image licensing. I'm not worried about someone else using the same stock images. I don't have to worry about Amazon saying I don't have the rights to use a certain image. But hand illustrated covers are much less common in women's fiction. They kind of are. It's difficult to tell. I think these days there are other authors I've noticed. I think Beth O'Leary is one of them, who her books as well, I wouldn't say are firmly lighthearted romances, but they're also not totally women's fiction because the romance is still a really important part of her books. But her books are just as much about the personal growth and self-discovery of the main character as they are about the romance, and her covers tend to be illustrated covers. So like I'm not the only author doing this. There are plenty of other authors who I feel like they straddle different genres. They straddle particularly romance and women's fiction. They're more than romantic women's fiction, because I don't know that that's quite right, but they're also not strictly romance. So yeah, I could keep rambling on about this. It's something that I threw in, like I mentioned it as a criticism of Eleanor's book, because I wanted to have something that the reviewers were saying that would be challenging for her to contend with, and that was an easy thing. It just kind of popped into my head as I was writing, because that's definitely something that I struggle with as a writer. And as an indie author in particular, it's very difficult, because how do I market my books? How do I talk about my books? In some ways it's more freeing, because I can talk about my books however I want and I can market them however I want. But when it comes to how Amazon, and right now I'm only on Amazon, I don't publish wide, but if I did publish wide, this would be a question on other platforms as well. How do these platforms feature my book? How do my books interact with the algorithm based on the terms, the keywords, categories, all of that, all the metadata that I provide? It's not quite so simple. And I feel like right now the metadata forms, when you upload a book, do kind of ask you to be really specific and to know exactly where your book falls. And so if your book straddles genres or blends different genres, it's a little bit more challenging to figure out how do you put together your metadata for the book. If hearing me talk about this has made you think, oh, well, that actually sounds interesting, all of my books are linked below. Please check them out. You can also go to my website, andreaseverson.com. There's a page dedicated just to my books, and then there's pages for each series. I'm still updating across the pond, but yeah, all of that information is out there. And then all my books are available in Kindle, paperback, and if you subscribe to Kindle Unlimited, you can read for free, all on Amazon. And just remember, I know there's a lot of people who don't like shopping on Amazon because they feel like they're not supporting small local indie businesses when they do, but when you buy my books on Amazon, you are supporting a female-owned business, a small indie business. If you live in Arizona, you're supporting a local Arizona-based business and indie author. I do think that when it comes to supporting indie authors, Amazon is the easiest place for us to publish, and so a lot of us start out solely on Amazon. It's very expensive and difficult to publish wide. It's not like thousands of dollars expensive, but it is more money than I currently have at the rate that I'm publishing my books. So Amazon is the easiest way for me to do this. So for whatever faults Amazon has, and I fully admit that they do have faults, when you buy my books on Amazon, or when you support any indie author by buying their books on Amazon, you are supporting small businesses. You are supporting local businesses if you're supporting an author who lives in your local area. If you want to support an indie author, I would really appreciate it, and all my books are linked down below. With that, I need to get back to teaching work. I've got some more grading to do. I've got the discussion boards to read for my business writing class, and then I need to try to get at least 10 photo essays from my advanced comp students graded. That's my goal, at least 10 a day. So we will just see how much I can do, and then we will talk about newsletter strategy and maybe potentially blogging again. That could be a bad idea. Blogging again, not talking about it. We'll definitely talk about it. I am officially done with teaching work for the week. So, newsletter, blogging, is this a bad idea? Where am I at with all of that? So the newsletter, like the evolution of the newsletter, I'm definitely changing how I feel about doing the newsletter. I'm really enjoying doing once a week, but if I'm emailing you all, or those of you who subscribe to the newsletter, link down below in the description box. If I'm emailing you once a week, I want it to also have value. I don't want to just be like the annoying person popping up in your email to say, hey, here's what I'm doing. I want it to be interesting, and I want it to have some sort of value and be an addition to the content you're already getting from me, and not just an annoyance that you don't have any incentive to open. Eventually, I do have ideas for like short stories and alternate scenes and things like that I want to write. I need brain space to be able to write those, and while I'm still trying to get this book finished, I just feel like I can't justify doing that. And so then the thought of blogging again just seems like, is that really a good idea? But we'll get to that in a moment. So as far as the newsletter strategy is concerned, I still want to keep them short-ish, with like short updates of what has been going on that week and links to the vlogs of that week. But then I also want to be like answering a question that one of you have asked, or the way that Mandy did, because that was just amazing. That was better than I was expecting. So thanks again, Mandy, because I loved being, it just prompted such a great discussion that led to a really fun email to write for the newsletter list, but then has also led to a really interesting discussion, I think, here in this vlog. I've actually really been enjoying filming this vlog so far today, and everything that we've talked about so far today. I'm definitely enjoying all of that. So that was really fun, and I want more like that. So if you're subscribed to my email list and you have a question about my books or about writing in general that you would like me to answer in an email and potentially expand on more in a future vlog, please let me know. I'm gonna do better at like collecting those. If you've asked a question in the past and I haven't answered it, it's just because it's slipped my mind. It's not because anyone has asked a question that I didn't want to answer. So please feel free to just keep asking it. I promise I will get to it eventually. But then I also would like to be sharing more tips and tricks about writing, and talk about mindset and the psychological side of writing, and just the things that we talk about here. I want to add more of that into the newsletter, into the weekly email, but also this is why I'm thinking of blogging again. My website has a blog page. I've posted 2 blogs on there back when I first started the website, when I was more positioning myself as a copywriter. So I think those blog posts are eventually going to go away. I have some blog posts on my old blog on Blogger, which was researchandramblings.blogspot.com. I think that might still be linked somewhere on this channel. I loved working on that blog, and there was a point during the end of my PhD where I was really consistent, but then I kind of started burning out because it just felt like I was kind of falling into a rut of 5 tips for this or that related to your PhD, and it felt like I was writing stuff based on SEO and searchable content, and I wasn't writing stuff that I was actually interested in. Half of that blog was supposed to be related to my research. I've done some posts related to my research, but not a lot. And when I've thought about resurrecting that blog, going back to the kind of content I was writing, I don't have an interest in that. And I don't want to change that blog to something new. I'd rather let that stay there as an archive of the blog posts I was writing at that time in my life, because there were some posts on there that I just really, really love. And some of them I think I could adapt and update and revise with this new vision for a blog that I have in mind, and do all of that on my website, on the blog page on my website. I've thought about doing Substack or something like a Substack instead of the blog page on my blog. I could always migrate that over at some point. So I think for now I'm going to start on my own website, because then everything is on my website, and then if someone lands on that blog post, they're also landing on my website and will be able to see my books and my services and all of that. And I think that is really valuable for me. But I was thinking of the blog and starting to blog again as a space of having a space to do longer form text-based content that is longer than what I would want to put in an email, because I don't want someone who's subscribed to the email list who just wants the links to that week's blogs, or just wants the quick writing update, or is looking for behind the scenes of writing my books, or like a bonus scene or bonus chapter. I don't want them to feel like they're getting content they're not interested in. So I figure if I start blogging again on my website, then I can have links and previews of that blog post in the weekly email, and then people can just click into the blog on my website if they want to read the whole thing. I'm just feeling like there's things that I start talking about, but because I don't script my videos, there's certain types of content that I just feel like I'm not able to do here on YouTube, because I'm not a tips and tricks channel. I don't do scripted content. I don't do searchable content. Like, if you've landed on my vlogs, it's not so much. Every now and then I'll do something that I think does well in search rankings, like my Scrivener videos, for example. But generally I'm doing these kinds of very chatty vlogs where I talk about things like, you know, what I've been talking about today that might be relevant to people. But if someone's researching how to know what genre your book is, like, that's different from the conversation that we've been having, and that's a different audience in a way. And so I feel like having a blog again might be a way of allowing me to do that more structured educational content. I'm really trying to get specific about what kind of content I'm making on which platform. Now the question is, do I have time to make additional content? Not really. But I think part of my problem with creating extra content has been that I just haven't had a clear vision of what I want that content to be. And I think a blog post, like the vlogs I'm doing twice a week, the emails I'm doing once a week, I think a blog post could be something that maybe I start off with once a month or once every other week, and then gradually increase it as I feel like I get used to it. When I have a solid idea for a blog post, like just thinking back to when I was a PhD student and a graduate teaching assistant and a YouTuber and a blogger, and I was doing all of those things on a regular, like, weekly basis. And so back then, when I have a solid idea, it kind of comes together as fast as my fingers can type it, which is pretty fast, because I am pretty fast at typing. Yeah, there's been a part of me that has really missed blogging, but I just haven't quite known what I would blog about, because I kept thinking that going back to blogging meant going back to my old blog, and I just feel like I'm in a different place. And it didn't feel right to go back to what I was talking about on my old blog. I don't want to delete it. Like I said, I'll keep it as like an archive of that time of my life. Although I should go through and like save all of those posts somehow. Maybe there's a new era of me as a blogger. So I don't know. Don't expect a new blog post next week. Definitely once Across the Pond 4 is done and out, I think I could start focusing on that. Right now, I'm just kind of generating ideas of the kind of blog posts I think I'd want to do. So if you have ideas, like I said, for a question to answer in my newsletter each in the weekly email, or something that you would like to see me talk about in a blog, let me know in the comments and I will add it to my list. But yeah, it's just one more thing that, like, I don't know, it just feels like it would be nice to add to my author platform, if you will, as another space where people can get to know me. I feel like there's a different side of me that comes out in a blog compared to here on YouTube and the vlogs. I'm a writer, first and foremost. I'm also a visual storyteller. I'm a storyteller, first and foremost. I do think that's the most important thing. And then how those stories come out are slightly different depending on the medium, whether it's a vlog, a written blog post, the email newsletter, or the fiction work in my novels. But it's, yeah. Anyway, I'm getting distracted. This is getting long again. I didn't want this clip to be this long, but that's just something that's been rattling around in my head, and it just feels like I have a space on my website. Like, I'm paying for this website and I have a space where I can blog, and it would be really good content marketing for both my books and my services. So stay tuned. I will update you when there is something to update you on, but that is definitely something that's rattling around in my head. But speaking of Across the Pond 4, this cover, unfortunately, is not designing itself. I've got Photoshop opened up. I've got the cover in front of me. I'm not sure how I'm going to time-lapse this because I can't show you what I'm working on. I'll show you this direction of the process. You have to wait before you can see that direction of the process. Okay, I'm not done with what I wanted to get done today, but I'm close. Like, it's getting there. So yeah, oh, we've got a low battery light. Let me switch that. Too many time lapses. That's what kills these batteries. Time lapses and me talking for 20 minutes straight. But yeah, as you saw in a little teeny tiny, or rather like really zoomed in look at the cover, one small part of the cover zoomed in really wide, there's a lot of like just really repetitive, finicky work. And it's not hard, it's just time consuming. But cover work has gone well. We're making progress. It's been a good day. It's been a good Friday. At the very beginning of this vlog, you saw some B-roll of it. I went to Whole Foods with Mom. We had a nice time there. It's feeling like fall at the grocery store now. They have all the pumpkins and mums and cinnamon pine cones. It smells amazing as you're walking up to Whole Foods now. They've got all of that in this big display out front, which I love. That's always like that's like the biggest sign that it's fall here in the desert. When it finally gets cool enough that they can put the pumpkins outside and not have them go bad because it's so hot. And so like, even though it doesn't feel like fall here in Phoenix, it's starting to look like fall, at least when I go to the grocery store. And then inside Whole Foods, they've got even more fall stuff. So yeah, we had a lovely time at Whole Foods. The weather was really nice this morning going out to Whole Foods. It was so nice this morning. So we had a really good time. But yeah, now I'm all stocked up on yummy food for the week and I'm ready to just relax for the weekend. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this vlog. I hope it's been interesting. I've really enjoyed talking about some of the things that we've talked about. A little nervous about putting it out there that I'm thinking about blogging again, but hey, accountability. If I say it, maybe I'll actually do it. So let me know in the comments if you'd be interested in that. I'll do it anyway. I'm not expecting my YouTube audience to be my blog audience, but I do think it'll be good for me overall from a business perspective. And I think it'll just scratch an itch in my brain that has been bothering me for a while now. So we'll see. If you enjoyed this vlog, I hope you did. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you're not subscribed. I'd really appreciate both of those things. In the comment section, you can leave me some fall related emojis for all the fall colors, all the fall stuff, the signs of fall that are slowly popping up here in Phoenix, to let me know which one of you lovely people have made it all the way to the end, because you all are the real MVPs and I adore each and every one of you. And in the comments, let's chat. For those of you who are writers, I'd love to hear from other writers how autobiographical is your work. But whether you're a writer or a reader, let's talk about genre and books that maybe don't fit neatly into one genre. Do you look for books that fall firmly in one genre, or do you prefer or do you like or even prefer books that kind of blend genres or straddle two different genres? I definitely almost prefer books that like do a little bit of genre bending or genre straddling. It makes it more interesting when it's not just a straight up romance or just a straight up fantasy. Then you can also let me know about blogs. Do you blog? Would you read my blog? What topics would you like to see me cover in the newsletter, in the emails if you subscribe to those? Or what topics would you like to see me talk about in the blog once I finally get it going? Let me know. Those are all your different question options for the comments. But yeah, I'm gonna log off now and go relax and start my weekend, and I will see you all very soon in the next vlog. Thank you very much for watching this one. Bye!